All right, so we're heading into a new series, Five Love Languages, and just full disclosure, I mentioned it in the video, if you saw that. This is not my idea. This isn't anything I came up with, and it's not my research, anything like that. It's a book that was written a number of years ago by Dr. Chapman called The Five Love Languages, and if you have not read it, I encourage you to get a copy of it. We don't sell them or anything like that here, but you can get them on Amazon, you can get them in the bookstores, whatever. They're pretty popular out there. You can find one and grab one. It looks a lot like that. Put it on your Kindle, whatever. This is their website. I encourage you to take the test. There's a quiz on there to figure out your love language. How many of you have taken the quiz? So a lot of you. I took it the other day, and it was different than what it was for me last time I did it, like 15 years ago. And so that was kind of interesting. It wasn't hugely different, but just shifted a little bit, which I found to be rather fascinating. So if you're in a married relationship, you want to know what your love language is, but you also need to know what your spouse's love language is. So that's just really critical to what we're going to be talking about in these next few weeks. A couple foundational things here. Things we need to know for this series. One is we all have a primary emotional love language. This is the Dr. Chapman research stuff. He's identified 5 love languages that we probably speak one or two higher than others. We'll identify with all of these, but these are the 5. The words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Like I say, we'll respond to every one of these, but there'll be one, maybe 2 that tend to creep up higher to what you'll respond to, that if people have this in your life, you will feel loved in the relationship. These are what he calls your love languages. Everybody likes to receive a compliment. I mean, most people, hate being complimented, but there are some people who, if you get a compliment, it not only motivates you, but it just makes you feel better. I mean, it just makes you it just makes you feel loved. We all like to receive gifts, right? I mean, you want something that's kind of cool. Someone gives you something, but some of you, and it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be like a car. It could be a child looking through the neighbor's yard, because you don't have dandelions, but the neighbor's yard, finding the perfect little dandelion and bringing it to you as a beautiful gift, right? And just the thought of that just makes your little heart flutter. You probably have the love language of receiving gifts. It's not about money. We'll talk about that later, but it's just about how much you put into that. Oh, they thought so carefully about that little weed. Isn't that great? And it makes you feel good. Makes you feel loved. Now, here's the tricky part about these is you have a love language, whether you have identified it or not, and you tend to show love in the way that you receive it. We tend to speak our own language. It's just natural to us. It's not good or bad. It's just what you tend to do. And if you're in a married situation, there's a good chance that your spouse has a different love language, and you're showing them love in the way you want to receive it, and they might not be hearing "I love you" from what you're doing. I mean, it's very possible you're speaking different languages. If my love language is acts of service, then I might think, boy, I really love my wife, Cheryl, and I'm just going to wash the dishes for her, and I'm going to paint the house, because she mentioned the other day it's not looking very good, and she mentioned that the car looks kind of dirty, so I'm going to wax the car, and she said she wants a Cheryl she shed, so I'm going to go ahead and build her a she shed because the other one burned down, you're going to have that. That's how I'm expressing love to her. But if her love language is quality time, she's going to be going, how come you're always spending time doing things not with me? You must not love me. Right? And I'm thinking, I'm doing everything. I'm working my fingers to the bone to show you how much I love you. And she's like, I'm not here. I don't see it. You're not with me. You ignore me. You'd rather be out there pounding a she shed together than talking to me. You don't love me. See, that's how it happens. That can become a problem. I mean, once in a while that's going to happen anyway. But if you have a pattern of years and years, and I'm thinking as the dude, man, my wife must think I really love her because I wash the dishes and vacuum the floor and build her a shed. And she's thinking, man, he doesn't love me because he doesn't spend any time with me. You see that could be a problem? Because at some point, she's drying up on the vine because I'm not spending time with her, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with you, woman? I love you. Look what I'm doing. And that can cause all kinds of issues in the relationship. So that's why it's important. You got to know your love language, but you have to know your significant other's love language so that you can speak their language so that they know that they're loved. Number 2, we all have love tanks. right? Every person has an emotional love tank that gauges the health of the relationship. In the love spectrum, our love language is the fuel that fills the tank. And if your love language is, say, words of affirmation, every time someone compliments you, every time someone builds you up, that is putting fuel into your tank. It energizes you, and we want to keep it full. Number 3, the health of your relationship is directly linked to your love tank. Like any gas tank, the gas runs out. I mean, you can't just say, well, I said I loved you 10 years ago. Do I have to say it again? I washed the dishes that one time. Remember that time we did something special? I mean, if you know their love language, you have to keep filling their tank because it will run out. And when it runs out, that's when you have relationship problems. So to gain the most out of this series over the next 5 weeks, like I said, you got to know your love language. You need to know your spouse's love language so that you can speak that love into their life. And you can consciously put effort into doing it because you will naturally speak your own language. Whether she or he, I'm thinking I'm a guy, but whether your spouse hears it or not. So you have to know it. A couple scriptures. We're a church, got to throw scripture in, right? Because this is important stuff here. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. 1 Peter 3:7. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. Guys, how many understand your wife fully? The lights are bright. I'm not sure I see a lot of hands out there, but right, okay. And women, likewise, how many fully understand your man? All right. Live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as a weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of grace of life, so that your prayers may be hindered. Now, first I have to address the weaker thing, because you're not going to hear a word. I'm going to say, oh, you can't believe this is weaker. Okay, get an idea what's actually being said here. Don't get caught up with the word weaker. He's not saying that the woman is less significant or less important, that she's lesser of a human being. It's actually quite the opposite of what he's saying here. Back when this was written, it was, you didn't get on Amazon to purchase your dinnerware for your house, and so there were potters in every community, and they would make the plates, and anybody could go get a cheap set of plates like you can today. But there were some potters that had they had extra years of service, extra training, extra skill, and they'd made plates that were just above the others. They were beautiful, they were precious, and you didn't want to break those, so you spent a lot of money in those. So they would handle them with care, put them in a special place. I don't know if we do china so much like we used to, but you probably know what I'm talking about. If you have fine china in your home, that you have a china cabinet. It's like those aren't your everyday dishes. They're the ones when the special people coming over, you bring out your fine china. They had a sign over their business called the weaker potter. Right? That's just how that was the terminology. It was weaker. It was precious. And what Peter was saying here: treat your wife as she's the most valuable thing in your life. She's precious, not just an everyday something you can just throw away and buy another one. But she is the most precious human being in your life. That's what he's talking about when he talks about weaker, treating her like the weaker person. So that's that. Get that out of our way. The part I want to really focus on in this 1 Peter verse is, likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing her honor. Understand your wives. I think most of us could spend our entire lives digging in to trying to figure out our wives, to understand her. I think it applies for women, for men too. Understand your husband, but it specifically says, husbands, understand your wives. It takes some effort. You can't just get married and just coast for the next 20, 30 years. You have to get to know her. You have to study her. You have to see what makes her feel special, what makes her tick, what it takes to make her feel loved, which is really what this series is all about. I'm helping you fulfill what Peter is saying here. So study it, hunt for it, talk about it. If you try to do it naturally, it'll take you 25 years, and you might accidentally get half of it. Hopefully we can fix that all for you now, and you can just move forward from this series and just have that done. Now it's to practice it. But first part is to understand your wife, understand your husband, that significant other in your life. So if you're listening to your spouse, they're probably already telling you what makes them feel loved. Generally, it comes out in conversation. We just often don't hear it, or we discount it as, oh, that's silly, or no, I'm building you sheds and washing your dishes. What do you mean I don't want to spend enough time with you? I mean, that's silly. We discount it. So listen to your spouse, to what they're actually saying, but we're going to dig into this a little bit in this next few weeks, and maybe we can just have a conversation and just kind of lay it all out there for you. That'll be on your time, though, to do. How many took the test? There was a bunch of you. The quiz. All right. How many had quality time? That's what we're going to talk about today. Quality time. Interestingly enough, I took the test, and this was my love languages. It elevated to the top, and I don't know what changed in my life or anything, but it did kind of make sense after I took the test and realized that I mean, it scored well and above the other ones, because I started looking at my life thinking, you know what, actually, I have built things into my life that make sense with quality time. I drive around with the radio on all the time. I mean, I even have satellite radio because I like to listen to lots of different things. I have different types of music I'll listen to. Sometimes I throw on the symphony. Sometimes I throw on 80s. Sometimes I throw on Christian stuff. Sometimes I throw a little talk radio. And then I just realize everybody hates each other, so I go back to symphony. And, you know, I kind of flip it. But it's always on, always. It's always on. But if anyone ever gets in my vehicle, you would think I don't have a radio. I turn that puppy off always. It's just never on. It's just some weird thing I came up with, but then it made sense when I realized I had quality time as my love language. That's how I'm showing people I love them. I'm putting no distractions in my truck. That when we're driving down the road, I want to hear fully what you're saying, and I'm not going to start, singing a Journey song in the middle of your sentence because I'm listening halfway to the radio and halfway to you. I'm actually listening to you and engaged. And so that kind of makes sense when I took the test and realized, maybe that really is a thing. Maybe I really do have quality. I'm not saying that that's your rule you have to follow. I'm just saying that's probably why I do that. It's my way of honoring the people in my vehicle, even though half the time they're saying, put on some music. I'm saying, no, I want to hear you talk. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm saying I want music. No. So that's weird. But it's all about being present with the conversation. Cheryl and I were in the truck the other day on a little drive, and she actually put some music on, which never happens. And I stood it for about 3 minutes, I think, and I finally just, I can't do it. I was like, I felt this wall building between us, and I just turned the thing off. She's like, what's up with that, Well, then I took the test. I thought, I felt like she didn't love me anymore. She was listening to this, like it was country music, too. It's like, who does that? I'm like, I don't know. Sorry. But, so that happened. Jesus is talking to his disciples one day, and he's a little irritated with them. Because he would, speak, and they wouldn't understand what he was saying, and he'd do things, and they didn't really get what he was doing. And in Mark 8:18, he says, "Do you have eyes but fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear?" Now, obviously, the answer is yes. And part of that was on purpose. Part of that he kept hidden for spiritual reasons. But I wonder how many times your wife or husband says, or is thinking that at least to you. Didn't we just talk about this? Haven't we said this 14 times? Do you have ears but don't hear? Do you not even know that I was in the room? How many times does that happen in our relationship? Our spouse is talking to us, but our mind's 10,000 miles away, thinking about something else or some other project we're thinking about doing, or we're mentally engaged with something completely different, maybe the music on the radio or the television screen behind, or whatever. You're at a restaurant, you're listening to someone else's conversation when you should be listening to your spouse's conversation. I'm old enough to remember the birth of cell phones and how revolutionary that was to our lives. It was so wonderful. A lot of you have grown up with them now, so you're like, well, cell phones, of course, right? But it was a big deal because we were able to take our phone with us, in the church world. I didn't feel like I had to sit in an office all day just in case, something. It was like they could call me on my phone anywhere, anytime, and it was great. But then I learned it was an awkward transition for a couple of years for much of America as we figured out how to handle cell phones. Because I don't know how many times that we went out as a family and I had promised some fantastic adventure, or I don't know, went somewhere exciting like Chuck E. Cheese, or who knows, whatever. We're doing something, and I'm with the family, and at some point the phone would ring. And this was before I realized you don't have to answer the phone every time. It was like, the phone's ringing. It's a requirement. You have to always answer the phone, even if they're trying to sell you something. It doesn't matter. You always answer the phone. That was my early misconception of the cell phone. So there I was with my family, but not with my family. And understand that happened. That's every night. I mean, it's not like, well, once in a while. Of course, it's like that means a lot of families gave up family time totally, because every night someone at work would call, or business would call, or in the church world a church person would call, and there was always something to talk about. And I was not with the family anymore. They might be having their little fun, or might be sitting there and having a burger or something, but I'm having a conversation with somebody else about something else for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or however long the conversation was. And then after that, my mind kept going on the conversation. I never came back. And that became not a healthy situation in the family. It got to the point where when the phone rang, the girls would get this just painful look, and they'd say, they both in unison, "Don't answer it." And they said it a few times. I realized, maybe I shouldn't answer it. They're probably the ones who taught me, I don't have to answer the phone. And at some point, I transitioned to, when I'm with my family, doing a family event, I can turn the ringer off, because there's another great invention called the voice message, voicemail, or the texting. I mean, there's other ways to communicate, in the modern world. But it took me a little while to figure that out. And once I did, I was able to be engaged, quality time with my family. Now, that rule spread to other people, so now I got to the point where I'm with anybody. It doesn't matter who I'm with you, my cell phone is off, because you're the most important person in my life at that moment. We're having lunch together, we're having a meeting together, we're having a conversation. I want to give you quality time. I have been with people who the whole time they're like, they keep stopping and talking, and I'm like, you're really wasting my time now. I could be doing something else. I mean, I could, whatever. I could be listening to country music in my truck, and instead of, watching you talk to someone else. So I've learned, I just turn my phone off all the time. Now, sometimes I forget to turn it back on, but still, it became healthy. Quality time is about engaging with the person you're with, actually being present with your spouse, actually having a real conversation, a one-on-one, two-way conversation, emotionally and spiritually, and just being with that person. Okay? So along that line, a couple thoughts. Proximity doesn't count. Okay? Just driving in the car together doesn't mean you're having quality time, because you might have your mind somewhere completely different. Just being together doesn't mean quality time. Sitting in the same room or at the same table doesn't mean quality time. I know people who can literally drive clear across the nation for hours upon hours and say like 5 words to each other. Now, if both husband and wife are happy with that, that's good. Listen to your music, your podcast, or whatever you're doing. But if one of them has quality time, that person is drying up on the vine thinking, how come they're with me and I'm not even valuable enough that they're next to me. They still won't talk to me. That is actually a negative. You can't count that as, I was with you for 12 hours. What do you want? It's like you have to engage for 12 hours if you're in the car, if their love language is quality time. If it's not quality time, well, then do whatever. It doesn't matter. You can figure that out. Which leads to the next thing, talk it out. Sit down and talk about what it is you both like to do together. If quality time is the love language, and have a conversation. You have to actually talk this out. Hey, what shall we do? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be golfing, boating, mowing the yard, I don't know, going on trips, going to the beach, playing board games. It's just whatever. Just sit down and have the conversation. Hey, what do you like to do when we hang out together? But you got to have the conversation. Talk it out. The idea is to do something you both enjoy. This was a big month for the Hudson family. We loved being mom, dad, parent thing, for the past 30 years. It's been great, but we married off our youngest child, so now both of our children are out of the home, and they're starting their own families, and all that stuff. It's all good and healthy, and it's how the plan has always been. But I also know us well enough to think, man, you don't just turn that off, right? So I could foresee us moping around the house for the next 6 months, whining about, oh, we haven't, what are we going to do? We don't have any kids, I don't know, we just getting mopey. I could just see that happening to me, especially. I don't want to throw that on Cheryl. And so I knew Cheryl would have some of the same difficulties, so we decided we had to do something to reboot. Okay, but this is a big transition in life. Let's do something. And so we didn't lie around moping all the time. And so we headed to Duluth, Minnesota for a couple nights. A little mini marriage retreat, we called it, where we would spend just far enough away that it's going to be some effort. So it's a 6-hour drive, just 2 nights. Cheryl got off work Thursday. We got in late Thursday night, so it was all day Friday, left back Saturday. This was last weekend. Came back Saturday morning. So just enough time that we had a 6-hour quality conversation all the way there. And here's the goal. Here's the goal. We're going to make goals. What does the next 25 years look like? Made some financial goals, health goals, spiritual goals. I mean, just all kinds of goals, right? What does life look like? What all the stuff we talked about doing to the house, maybe it's time to do that stuff to the house now. Just stuff like that. We had a big list of stuff we wanted to talk about. So we had a 6-hour drive where we got to talk about all that stuff in pretty good detail. Oh, and we brought our dog because we thought old people go with dogs and travel, right? And so we're not really old yet, but let's see if the dog can travel so we can make plans for later, right? So we brought Turk along, and we went on this little ride to to Duluth, and started making all these plans. And then we spent 2 hours writing stuff down. I can see there's great pictures up in Duluth of playing with Turk. Oh, this is great. How often do you get to show vacation pictures to everybody, right? And there we are, home. And then Cheryl really had a good time at the hotel. She's going to be mad I even showed this, but I put it on Facebook, so it's okay. All the stuff we had spent hours talking about, and then a few hours walking around and kind of confirming, but then we spent a little bit of time at the hotel and we wrote it all down. Then I brought back and put it on the hard drive, and now it's real, and well, who knows what will happen to it. But we have a plan. We have a plan for the next 25 years of our life. Now, that was refreshing. It was a reboot. We both came back feeling fantastic and feeling like, hey, let's conquer this thing, because I know, like I said, we probably would have been moping around still okay, well, now, she's married, everything's changed, It was a healthy thing, and it was total quality time. That was actually when she turned the country music on, and on the way home, and I was like, you can't do it. And then she fell asleep, so I guess she was done anyway. So she napped most of the way home. But we had all the quality time up to that point, and it was very healthy for our relationship. It was very healthy to position us now for the next stage of life, and it was reaffirming about the things we had talked about for the past 25 years or so. Now it's like, okay, let's put this in print. Let's really make a plan. Let's do this. Let's conquer life. Otherwise, we're going to sit around and say, oh, I wish I would have. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that in my life. So we got a great plan going on. So it was good. That's quality time. Little did I know, I hadn't taken the test yet. I felt so good because, man, that filled my tank. That totally filled my tank. I'm good to go. She's been talking to me for 6 weeks now. She's on vacation now. She can enjoy this. Here's the deal. Spend time with your spouse. If their love language is quality time. Engage, be purposeful. I have some assignments. I'm going to give you some little assignments every week. So here's the assignments. First, take the test, discuss your love languages. Okay? Do it online, it's free, it doesn't cost anything, it's 20 questions or something, I can't remember what it is. It's really simple. If you did it before, do it again. I was surprised, like I said, but it made sense. The more I thought about it, how mine had evolved. Secondly, go for a walk and just talk it through. You and that person. Here's my love language. What's your love language? Talk it all about. What we're going to do. 3, meet for lunch, supper, whatever, just the two of you, some romantic little meal, and talk about what kinds of things you want to do together. So go that next step. Now you know your love languages, and if it happens to be quality love, okay, so what are we going to do? Let's come up with some. Doesn't have to have, it doesn't have to be Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we will bowl. I mean, you just say, hey, what do you want to do in the next 6 weeks? the next 6 months. And that's number 4. Block out some regularly scheduled quality time between now and Christmas so that this fall you have been purposefully filling the love tank of that person whose love language is quality time. And again, it doesn't have to be specific. Just say, hey, Thursday night's going to be family time, whatever night it is. Sunday afternoon, we're going to do whatever. But be intentional, otherwise it won't happen. It won't happen. Write it down and say we're going to do it. Make a plan. All right? Quality time. Let's pray.